Oh my God, people. Today we have got a property you are going to, I'm not kidding, guys, you're going to love. You're going to love. Check this out, guys. Look at this. 20-acre property located in the heart of the Cibola National Forest, overlooking the Red Rock Mesas, surrounded by beautiful rustic home sites, visited by woodland creatures scampering about to and fro, and consisting of a diverse topography, some nice flat cutout areas, perfect for building, some forested parts, some rock outcroppings, plenty of land to explore and hike and hunt, a path of seasonal water flow cutting through the land itself, all in close proximity to Ramah Lake itself, offering plenty of opportunities for boating and fishing and general relaxation. This one is, and I think you all know me well enough at this point to know that I do not use this word lightly, a gem. This one's a gem, guys, a 20-acre gem. When this one came across my desk, I was genuinely shocked that this was available to purchase. And while this property can be used any number of different ways, I think that this is really going to appeal to the hunters out there. Now, in spite of beginning the video this way, listing all the things you're going to love about this property, there needs to be a disclosure here at the outset. This property, this fantastic property I just teased, is not part of an HOA. Let me say that again, guys. This property is not part of an HOA. And for the hearing impaired, let's just write it on the screen one last time, not part of an HOA. If you buy this property, you will be subject to none of the rules, restrictions, covenants, bylaws, or annual dues of any HOA. And I go out of my way to mention this, guys, not only because I know how much you all hate HOAs and rules in general, but because the property sits about a mile east of a pretty well-established HOA community. Point being, if you look at today's property, if you like it, if you love it, if you pack with the wife and kids and you take a drive out to scout the property, you are going to pass about 1 million signs for the HOA. Road signs, placards, ornate entranceways, warnings, no trespassings, the list goes on. To the point where you're going to be like, I think this Hemingway guy is trying to pull a fast one on me. I think this is part of the HOA. It's not, I promise. But in order to talk about the one, I need to mention the other. You'll see why in a bit. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's go to the map. All right, people, so pictured in front of us is the state of New Mexico. The property is in this state. More specifically, it's located in the northwest part of the state in Cibola County and sits roughly 2.5 hours west of Albuquerque. So if you're in Albuquerque, you take the I-40 out to Grants, bang a sharp left on the 53, and head down here to Ramah, where you will find the subject property located just north of the highway. In fact, guys, you see that splotch of green right there on the map? Notice how the pin sits right on the edge of that green area? Feels significant, doesn't it, guys? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment. For now, however, just want to pull back on the map for a second, just to show you guys the property is roughly equidistant from Grants up here, which is the county seat of Cibola County, as well as Gallup over here, which is the county seat of McKinley County. Both are about an hour away. Point being, Ramah's not a major town. You got a grocery store, a gas station, small things like that. If you're purchasing a property in this area, it's going to be either Grants or Gallup, where you're going for major grocery and supply runs, especially building materials. Grants has a Walmart and a Lowe's. Gallup has a Walmart and a Home Depot. The two of them share any number of fast food restaurants, hospitals, pharmacies, casinos, banks, schools, churches, so on and the like. And of course, guys, you can learn more about what's available where by going to the Towns and Attractions section of the listing page and reading up on what we have listed there, as well as reviewing the photo gallery. All right, back to the map. So the subject property is located just north of Highway 53. Now, looking at the map here, you'll notice this carved up area called Timberlake. This is the Timberlake Ranch, which is the HOA I was talking about earlier. Google Maps actually does not do this area justice because this section is only one of the units that makes up the ranch. They also have Timberlake South, located roughly over here, as well as a sister sub called, and I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Clochinto, roughly over here. Point being, they own a lot of land here. I won't say everything between the highway and the subject property, but most of it. So if you take a drive out here, you're going to see that everything is named Timberlake this or Timberlake that, and you'll see a number of signs for the Timberlake community. Now, here's where this works to your benefit, and it's why I'm making a big deal out of it. The distance between the highway and the subject property is about 5 miles, and along that drive, roads look like this, and then this. Point being, the roads are pretty well maintained. This is what they look like during the summer months, and my guess is this is also what they look like during the winter months. And why is that my guess? Because all the people who own land in Timberlake wouldn't be able to access their houses unless the HOA was regularly clearing the roads. Point being, if you buy today's property, you're going to be able to piggyback on other people's road maintenance dues and will have easy access back and forth to the main highway. That's the first thing. Now, circling back to the people's homes for a second, that's the next thing to be aware of in this region. As you will see from the photos, this is a very pretty area. You've got the Red Rock Mesas, you've got the forest, and nestled amongst them you have some very nice homes. Some look like this, others like this, and others still are even nicer because they back up to the surrounding sandstone cliffs. The HOA approves how these people build and design their homes. The HOA dictates what can and cannot be built out here and has rules about proper upkeep. So even though the property we're going to talk about today is not part of the HOA, property values will benefit, property values will continue to increase because the region is, number one, so damn pretty, but more so, number two, because the HOA is there making sure no one's land looks like this. The point is that this is another ancillary benefit for you as the nearby property owner. Finally, third thing before we get to the actual property, guys, Ramah Lake. Ramah Lake. Technically, it's called Ramah Reservoir, but I prefer to call it a lake because I think we can all agree, just sounds better. Whatever the case, this 100-acre body of water is a nice thing to have in your backyard. Now, when we zoom in on the map, you will see where the Timberlake Road veers off to the left into the HOA, and the Forest Road goes to the right, leading out to the subject property. To be clear, this is what that looks like from the road. Now, if you take the left here into the Timberlake community, you will come first to the entrance, which looks like this. And then if you continue further to the point where Timberlake Road becomes Lakeview Road, it will lead you back down and around to what is essentially the back entrance into the lake area. Now this, of course, is a public lake, but the Timberlake community has private access at this gate here. Either way, from the subject property, you'll have a number of routes you can take to backdoor your way into the lake. You won't have to drive all the way down to the highway and back up. All right, now, finally, people, on to the subject property. Here we go. So the property we're talking about today sits about a mile north of that turnoff I showed you earlier and can be accessed off of Forest Road 157. Now, this property is not like most of the properties we list in that it is not part of a formal subdivision. So it's not part of an HOA, but it's also not part of any sort of informal community. And by that I mean this land is not the product of some developer buying up 10,000 acres and chopping everything up into 520-acre like-type properties. Rather, this is one of these regions where some rancher owned, pick a number, 5,000 acres and subdivided everything down into smaller 160 and then 40 and then 20-acre chunks and sold them off that way, and this is one of the 20-acre chunks. And when people do that, it'll look a little different than a formal subdivision. So one of the first ways this difference manifests itself is in the roads. If this were a formal subdivision, someone would have planned the whole thing out with roads leading to every parcel. This isn't exactly like that. So while Forest Road 157 is the road you would use to access the land, it doesn't lead directly to it, but rather runs about 1,500 feet west of the property. So until you put in some kind of driveway, you either have to pull off the road and drive over uneven ground or get out and walk. Now, to answer the question I know you're all going to ask next, yes, despite that fact, the land does have legal access. We went through the title history and we can see that easements were allowed for when this parcel and the ones around it were originally created. And it should be noted, guys, that I was contemplating getting a survey done of the land with the easement staked out for the eventual buyer, but ultimately decided against it because, one, it would have cost about $5,000, which would have forced me to sell this for at least $7,500 more. Two, my guess is anybody who needs a survey isn't worried about the boundaries of the 20 acres so much as they are the legal easement area. And to me, that's something you need a surveyor to show you. I don't really think it's the kind of thing you can just guess at, even if it's been staked. But three, and this is the more relevant point, I don't think anybody's out here often enough or long enough to care where exactly you walk or drive or how exactly you access the land the first handful of times you go out there. Now, that doesn't mean do whatever you want. It just means you have time to figure it out. Next, let's talk about power. So, of course, the utilities end roughly about where the Timberlake Ranch ends. That said, there are a few home sites that have paid to have utilities extended. In fact, if we look at Google Maps, you can see a couple home sites branching off the Forest Road. You've got a utility easement here and some power poles running out to these two structures. And then if we go a little bit up the road, you can see some power lines here leading out to this house right here. From what I can tell, that's about where they stop, roughly a half mile south of the subject property. That said, the curious thing about this area is if you look at some of the other structures out here that sit north of this point, you will notice none of them have solar panels. Solar panels usually show up in these satellite images as really reflective bright spots close to the house. And if you don't see them, it's usually a good indication of some other power source. This structure doesn't have any, and if we go a little further north up the road, you will notice this one doesn't either. So they may be abandoned, but not from the photos I've seen. This is the one cabin, and this looks like something someone is living in, something still very much in use, but yet no power lines and apparently no signs of underground utilities either. So, not sure. At the very least, I can say power lines are no closer than a half-mile south, and if you're looking to develop the subject property, you should plan to use solar panels or some alternative source of power. Now, speaking of the property, guys, let's get to some actual photos. Here we go. So, first off, the land has some fencing along the western boundary, which separates it from the neighboring 20-acre lot. As I have teased already in this video, the property has a diverse topography, which includes some nice flat cutout areas, better for parking, camping, and building, as well as some forested areas and some rock outcroppings, better for exploring and hunting. And it should be noted, guys, the headline on this listing page calls this a forested hillside property. That's a bit of a reach. That's a little bit of me rounding off for conversational purposes. Hillside suggests that it rises or slopes consistently from one end to the other. This isn't exactly that, but rather a property that's big enough to have, we'll say, some notable changes in elevation throughout. So if you go to the listing page, scroll down to the Maps and Boundaries section, and click on the Topo Maps tab, you can see what I'm talking about. The lowest part of this property is on the northwest corner here, with an elevation of about 7,000 feet. From there, it kind of gradually rises, levels off, and then rises again until you get to the back or eastern end of the land, which sits about 200 feet higher. Point being, taking a look at these topographic images might give you a better sense of how the terrain changes throughout. Now, I just refer to this as a hunting property, and I say that not just, people, because it seems obvious from the setting or because our photographer ran into these guys and later these guys while he was out there, but because of one very important feature I think you're all really going to like. And to demonstrate this feature, let's go to the land ID map. Alright, so as you can see, here's the subject property. And to our south and to our north and to our west, you will see other privately owned 20-acre parcels. But if we pull back on the map a little bit and turn on the filter that tells us where the federal land is, you will see, check this out, people, this property backs up to U.S. government land, aka the Cibola National Forest. That's right, people. When I say this is a good hunting property, I don't mean it's good like getting your pickup truck, drive 20 minutes, then you're in the forest, and then you're in the designated area where you're allowed to hunt. This is literally wake up, roll out of bed, walk 10 feet, and you are within thousands and thousands of contiguous acres of hunting land. And here's the thing. This is the 1-2 knockout punch, guys. Even though many of you, I'm sure, are already sold on this property based on the fact that it backs up to the forest, wait till you get a load of this. So if we zoom back in on the property and turn on the water filter, you will see that running just west of the subject property is the Cibola Creek. And running east to west along the southern end of the subject property is a stream that feeds into that creek. And I know right now many of you are like, oh my God, this is incredible. I can't wait for Hemingway to show me some pictures of the creek. Right. Funny story, guys. So our New Mexico photographer, and we'll look at some more property photos while I talk here. Our New Mexico photographer's been with us a number of years. Good guy, solid guy. I have no problems with this guy. But in the entire time he's been shooting properties for us, he's never photographed one with an active water source on or close to the land. So apparently, when he went out to the property and saw the creek, and having never previously before been instructed to take pictures of a creek, he thought we wouldn't want that. And what makes it even more, we'll say, ironic, is that the 100+ photos he sent back included pictures like this, and one of these. And so I find this funny because when evaluating what he felt would best represent and sell the property, in his mind, animal feces outranked nearby water source. With that said, if we go to the drone images, guys, you can kind of make out this lush path of green running just west of the property and throughout this region. And in some of these pictures, it just looks like an arroyo, but he assured me there was water running through it when he was there. So much so that he suggested whoever develops the land may need to install some sort of bridge or culvert to get back and forth from the road to the property. And if you're watching this right now saying, hey, Hemingway, I call monkey shines. I don't think there is a creek by this property. Guys, I get it. I totally get it. If I were you, I'd be skeptical too. Selling a property with a creek, we should have pictures of the creek. I agree. We've added this image to the maps and boundaries section under the Topo tab to try and give you a better sense of it. I'm told water flows through it regularly. It's labeled on every map as a creek. It feeds into the Ramah Reservoir. And just north of here, there's supposed to be a waterfall in the forest somewhere. But realistically, if you're going to buy the property and you're close, you might want to take a drive out there, check it out for yourself. Either way, at the very least, to me, it suggests that the water table out here should be pretty easy to access, or that drilling a well shouldn't be too expensive. And based on both the water sources, the lush green land, as well as the number of developed home sites out here, I'd say that's probably a safe bet. Finally, guys, before we wrap up here, just want to mention a little about zoning and regulations. This is another benefit of the property, which is that basically there are none. The property is located in Cibola County, which has no formal county-wide zoning. It differs instead in these rural areas to HOA bylaws or subdivision guidelines, and as noted, this property is not in an HOA, and it's not even part of a formal subdivision. And this means there weren't even any covenants and restrictions recorded with the property when it was first subdivided. And for the record, those documents, because they're written by attorneys, almost always include prohibitions on firearms because it's residential land. Even that doesn't exist. Even that isn't restricting the property out here in any way. So we're really wide open in terms of possibilities for how the land can be developed and used. And if you come back here to the property details section of the listing page and go to the zoning and restrictions tab, you can read the only thing I was able to find, which are a few deed restrictions. Now, realistically, these don't even concern me enough to mention in this already overlong video, simply because, number one, I don't think anyone who's looking to develop the land would violate any of these anyway, but number two, who's even aware these exist and would be prepared to litigate to enforce them if you were to, for instance, build a structure less than 600 square feet? I mean, really. So, whatever the case, guys, these date back to 1973, and if you want to read them over, they can be found here on the listing page. Alright, so this is normally the part of the video where I discuss the purchasing process for the property, and of course, as with all of our listings, we have the purchase for cash, pay all at once option here, and the owner financing down payment plus affordable monthly payment option here. As with everything else with this property, however, it is unique and requires a little additional explanation and disclosure. So, goes like this. This property was purchased from someone who purchased it at a tax auction. That tax auction occurred in the last 5 years. In the state of New Mexico, title companies will not insure any property purchased at a tax auction until 7 years have passed. And that means not only that we were not able to purchase title insurance on the land, but it also means you will not be able to either until May 2027. Now, if you are a cash buyer, someone who wants to purchase this property and pay for it right now in full, what that means is that a title company will not be involved and you will have to pay our company directly via credit card, cashier's check, or wire transfer. It also means that we are, at this time, only willing to provide you with a special warranty deed. Now, if you buy the property and May 2027 rolls around and you decide you want to purchase title insurance, Hemingway Land will gladly cooperate with you when that time comes. We'll coordinate with the title company, we'll provide whatever documentation they need from us, and we will sign a new warranty deed. Regrettably, however, none of that can occur until then. You can buy it now, but you can't insure it until then. And if you have reservations about paying $35,000 directly to someone on the internet, I completely understand. I don't like to sell properties in this price range without having first acquired title insurance, and I don't like to sell them without that being a viable option for the buyer. That said, for reasons I hope are obvious, I made an exception when it came to this property. I investigated the title history, I was comfortable with it, and I made this exception. And if you do want to purchase this property, it will work the same way as it does with all of our smaller dollar properties. We write the deed, you approve it, we sign it, we notarize it, we mail it off to the county, they record it, and congratulations, you are the new owner, and yes, it's really that easy. Now, if you are a terms buyer, someone who wants to place a down payment, make affordable monthly payments as time goes on, not much will change for you. We're asking for $7,000 down, $500 a month for 78 months, and we are offering 12 months, same as cash. And if that sounds like something you can afford, simply click the Buy Now button, initiate the transaction with $500 down, and set up the recurring $500 monthly payment. We'll get you documentation within 24 hours, and then you can pay the remaining $6,500 balance, which we ask for within roughly 96 hours. And between now and the time you pay the property off, you'll have a land contract which will demonstrate your equitable interest in the property. And as always, guys, our land contracts contain only prepayment incentives, no prepayment penalties. And if you click this link right here, you can review everything you'll be asked to sign before placing even $1. Now, it should be noted, when we get into this price range, I prefer to run a deal like this through a title company and let a loan servicing company collect the monthly payments. I prefer the buyer have a mortgage and not merely a land contract. That said, again, because of the circumstances surrounding the chain of title on the property and how New Mexico title companies like to work, that cannot be an option until May 2027. When that time comes, we as seller and you as buyer can have a conversation about modifying, we'll say the substance, not the terms, but the substance of the agreement, so you can acquire title insurance and have a formal mortgage on the property. But that's a jump off that bridge when we come to a sort of conversation to have for another day, and at that point, it would be entirely up to you. And by the way, guys, everything I just discussed here can be found down here under the property details section of the listing page under the title info tab. So if it went too fast, any part here in the explanation, feel free to just read over this section here.